Hello everyone, Xeno What If here. Bring in the movie of What If Amuro Ray was Isekai. Link in the description of the fanfiction of this What If. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this is not a scam. This crossover of What If is actually a mix-up of SD Gundam and I'm a behemoth, an S-ranked monster, but mistaken for a cat, I live as an elf girl's pet. Prologue. A singularity of souls. The void was not empty. It was a sea of fading memories and dissolving consciousness, the afterlife. Within it drifted the soul of Amuro Ray, the legendary mobile suit ace of the universal century, a ghost untethered from time and space. His wandering was abruptly ended by a violent, unseen force. A portal, shimmering with impossible energies, tore open the fabric of this non-place. It seized his soul, and as he was pulled into the maelstrom, he felt another presence, a familiar, burning crimson aura, wrenched alongside him into the torrent. The soul of his rival, the Red Comet, was dragged into the same unknown. Their essences did not just travel together. Under the immense pressure of dimensional travel, they collided and fused, merging into a single, new singularity of being before being violently cast out. Amuro's eyes snapped open. He was lying on cold, damp stone, his body solid and real. He was clad in his familiar Londo Bell uniform, a beam pistol heavy on his hip. The air smelled of moss and ancient earth. What the hell? Where am I? He muttered, pushing himself up to take in his surroundings. He was in a vast, subterranean cavern, its walls glittering with strange minerals. The silence was broken by guttural snarls. Emerging from the shadows were creatures straight out of a fantasy game, hulking, bestial forms with glowing eyes. Instinct took over. He drew his pistol, firing precise beams of energy that vaporized the monsters. As the last one fell, a transparent, holographic display flickered before his eyes, overlaying his vision. Level up. Current level, 1. Amuro stared, incredulous. A stat screen. Health points. He remembered the RPG games children played before the One-Year War. This was impossible. And yet, the evidence was irrefutable. He was in another world, and it operated on rules far stranger than any new-type phenomenon he had ever encountered. He ventured deeper, using his soldier's instincts to find cover and conserve energy. To his astonishment, he found he could materialize other weapons from his Gundam. He summoned the massive RX-78 shield, using it to block savage attacks while he fired his sidearm. During a brief respite, he discovered a treasure chest, its contents vanishing into a digital inventory at his thought. Huh, he said to himself, a wry smile touching his lips. Even for a new type, this is new. His progress was halted by a thunderous roar that shook the very cavern. Before him, a colossal dragon made of living stone uncurled, its eyes glowing with ancient malice. It regarded the tiny human and his bizarre, non-magical shield with deep amusement. How amusing, it spoke, its voice a feminine rumble that echoed in his mind, translated, he realized, by the same system that gave him his HUD. A human with such foreign tools. I've dealt with worse, Amuro retorted, holstering his pistol. He focused, and the powerful beam rifle of the Gundam materialized in his hands. The dragon's eyes widened with intrigue at the alien weapon. It drew a breath to attack. Amuro didn't wait. With all his strength, he hurled the Gundam's shield like a discus, shearing through one of the creature's stony wings. The dragon roared in pain and surprise, and in that instant, Amuro fired the beam rifle. The searing energy scored a deep, molten gouge across its chest. Well, aren't you full of surprises? The dragon hissed, more intrigued than enraged. You wield no magic, yet you burn me. Perhaps next we meet, you will not be so lucky. With a whip crack of its tail, it struck the ground where Amuro stood. The floor gave way, and he was sent plummeting into the darkness below. He awoke moments later, his body aching. The HUD map glowed in his vision, charting the unfamiliar depths of this lower dungeon. He was bruised, but alive. A notification glowed softly, level 15. A small, genuine smile spread across his face. For the first time in a long time, he felt a thrill of pure, uncomplicated challenge. As he tried to stand, a wave of dizziness washed over him, and his vision began to dim. The last thing he saw before blacking out was a figure approaching, a woman of ethereal beauty with the pointed ears of an elf. Her eyes, wide with shock and curiosity, took in his strange armor and pilot suit. "Oh my," she whispered, her voice like music. What happened to you? She knelt, and with surprising strength, lifted him gently into her arms in a bridal carry, a final, surreal humiliation for the hero of Earth before consciousness left him completely. Far away, in a region of the world shrouded in perpetual twilight, a massive asteroid hung in the sky, a grim parody of Axis. Deep within its fortified core, a throne room had been carved from the rock. Upon a throne of polished obsidian sat a familiar figure, a man with golden hair, clad in resplendent red, his face hidden behind the cold, polished finish of a golden mask. He gazed out upon a hangar bay not filled with standard mobile suits, but with bizarre, chibi-fied SD versions of Zaku's, Dom's, and Goof's. His three most loyal generals knelt before him. "My Lord Emperor," one began. "The mustering of our new SD Neo-Zeon army is nearly complete." Char Aznable, the Red Comet Reborn, allowed himself a faint, cold smirk. He could feel it, a resonance in the fabric of this strange new world, a familiar psychic signature he would know anywhere. Amuro Ray, he thought, his smile widening. "You're here too." The game begins again. Chapter 1. The elf girl known as Arya. Consciousness returned slowly to Amuro Ray. The first thing he registered was the softness of a bed beneath him and the faint scent of herbs in the air. He opened his eyes to a cozy, sunlit room. He was bandaged, the dull ache in his ribs a persistent reminder of his battle with the rock dragon. The pain was manageable, a familiar companion to a soldier. Then came a second wave of awareness, bringing with it a flush of embarrassment. He was shirtless, his pilot's trousers the only familiar article left on him. His gear was neatly stacked on a nearby chair. "Ah, you're awake," a melodic voice said. He turned to see the elf girl from the dungeon. Her blonde hair seemed to catch the light, and her pointed ears twitched slightly as she offered him a warm, slightly flustered smile. "Thank you," Amuro said, his voice a bit hoarse. "For helping me." "No problem at all," she replied, her blush deepening. "I have to admit, for someone to be in the deeper dungeon halls alone, it was incredibly brave. Or reckless." She introduced herself. "I'm Arya." "Amuro," he responded. "It was my first time there." Over the next few days, Arya tended to his wounds with a gentle efficiency. She brought him meals, and to his continued embarrassment, insisted on staying nearby as he slept, claiming she needed to monitor his condition. The proximity was strange and unfamiliar, stirring a shyness in him that combat never could. He couldn't help but think how jealous some of his comrades from the White Base would have been to see the famed White Devil being nursed so attentively by a beautiful elf. One morning, Arya prepared to leave. "I have to return to the labyrinth today," she said, strapping on her gear. "There are quests to complete." "Just be careful out there," Amuro said, a genuine note of concern in his voice. "Thank you," she smiled softly before closing the door behind her. Alone, Amuro rose. His body felt strong again. He ripped off the remaining bandages and walked to the window, looking out at the strange sky of this new world. The feeling was undeniable now, a psychic pull he hadn't felt in a lifetime. Somewhere out there, his rival was also alive. The Red Comet had also been reborn. "If I was given a second chance," Amuro murmured to the horizon, "then so were you, Char. Is this fate, or some kind of cruel joke?" A sudden, protective impulse seized him. He quickly dressed, gathered his gear, and headed out, following the direction Arya had gone. He reached the labyrinth's entrance, a massive cavern leading into the earth, and paid for passage on a ferry, offering a simple explanation: he was a new adventurer. He kept his distance, watching from the boat as Arya expertly navigated a shoreline path. She moved with a dancer's grace, dispatching a group of goblins with swift, precise strikes and collecting their ears as proof of the completed quest. Amuro's new-type senses prickled a moment before he saw it. Movement in the shadows, not the clumsy skittering of a monster, but something mechanical. His blood ran cold. Emerging from a dark crevice was a mobile suit. But it was all wrong. It was a Rick Dom, shrunk down to a diminutive, chibi-like size, its once intimidating form now almost absurdly proportioned. Yet the weapon it carried, a massive axe, was utterly real and deadly. The SD Rick Dom's mono-eye swiveled, locking onto Arya. It lunged, its axe held high to cleave her in two. There was no time for thought. Amuro leapt from the boat, his mind screaming a single command. The massive, iconic shield of the RX-782 Gundam materialized in the air before him, deflecting the axe blow with a shower of sparks and a deafening clang. The force of the impact vibrated through him. The warrior Dom staggered back, its mono-eye focusing on Amuro. A synthesized, grating voice echoed from it. The Harbinger has arrived. The White Knight has returned. White Knight. The term meant nothing to him. His confusion was pushed aside by instinct. The shield dematerialized, and in its place, the brilliant blue energy of a beam saber ignited in his hand. The two weapons clashed, solid axe against searing plasma. Amuro's body moved on muscle memory, his new type reflexes allowing him to predict and parry every swing. This was a language he understood. This was a dance he knew well. With a final, fluid motion, he sidestepped a powerful overhead chop and drove his beam saber through the Dom's cockpit. The small machine erupted in a satisfying explosion, scattering metal and wiring. A flood of notifications appeared on his HUD. Experience gained. Level up. Current level, 25. As the smoke cleared, Amuro dismissed the beam saber. He turned to see Arya staring at him, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock, awe, and something else he couldn't name. He walked over and reached out a hand. "Are you all right?" I'm fine," she stammered, taking his hand. Her smile returned, brighter than before. "Thank you so much." Back on the ferry, Arya couldn't stop looking at him, a hopeful wonder in her eyes. As Amuro gazed out at the water, unaware of her scrutiny, a single thought echoed in Arya's mind, a prayer she hardly dared to believe. Could it be? Could he truly be the second coming of the White Knight? Chapter 2, The White Unicorn Kingdom. Walking through the bustling streets with Arya at his side, Amuro was acutely aware of the stairs. His stark white pilot suit and helmet were a bizarre sight in this fantasy world, drawing curious and suspicious glances from adventurers and townsfolk alike. He kept his helmet on, using its familiar confines as a shield against the unfamiliarity. They entered a raucous tavern, the air thick with the smell of ale and roasted meat. The stares intensified. An arrogant adventurer with a scarred face and cheap armor, emboldened by drink, swaggered over, his eyes fixed on Arya with a leer. "Well, hello there, sweet thing. Looking for a real man to partner with?" he slurred, reaching for her. In a fluid motion, Amuro stepped between them, his posture rigid. "I'm with her," he stated, his voice filtered through his helmet, low and firm. He placed a protective hand on Arya's shoulder, and he felt her tense, then relax into his touch, a blush warming her cheeks. The adventurer's face twisted in anger. "Who the hell are you supposed to be? Some kind of tin man?" The confrontation was cut short by a flamboyant voice. Now, children. No roughhousing in my establishment." The crowd parted to reveal the guild manager. Amuro did a double take. The man was something else. He was built like a barrel, yet wore garish makeup, bright red lipstick, and a feathered cape that wouldn't have been out of place in a Neo-Zeon officers' club. What kind of world is this? Amuro thought, utterly bewildered. Later, in the guild manager's surprisingly normal office, Amuro filled out the paperwork to register as an adventurer. He explained his unusual circumstances, found unconscious in a dungeon, no memory of how he got there, but capable in a fight. The guild manager, whose name was apparently Magnus, raised a painted eyebrow as he reviewed Amuro's stated achievements. Taking down a rockworm and reaching level 15 on your first day. Either you're the luckiest newbie I've ever seen, or you're not telling me everything, Magnus said, stamping the form with a flourish. Welcome to the guild, Mr. Ray. Try not to break anything too expensive. The rest of the day was a whirlwind. Arya, seemingly ecstatic about his new status, dragged him to the communal baths, a natural hot spring at the edge of town. Amuro stood rigidly at the edge, his face red beneath his helmet as Arya, blissfully unaware of his discomfort, floated in the water, her voluptuous figure barely concealed by the steam. "Are you not coming in? The water is wonderful," she called. Before Amuro could formulate an excuse, the moment was shattered. The arrogant adventurer from the tavern had returned, this time with a score to settle, publicly challenging Arya to a duel to prove her choice in men is flawed. Arya accepted, but the fight was uneven. The man was stronger and more brutal. As he disarmed her and raised his sword for a final blow, Amuro's instincts overrode his desire to remain inconspicuous. His HUD flashed. New system function unlocked. Armor synthesis. "I guess I have no choice," Amuro muttered. He hurled the RX-78 shield he had summoned earlier. It flew through the air, and as it spun, it erupted in a brilliant flash of light. Nanomachines are magic, Amuro didn't know which, swarmed over his body, assembling and forming plates of armor in a blinding instant. When the light faded, Amuro stood encased in the full, iconic armor of the RX-782 Gundam, scaled to his human proportions. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. The adventurer stared, his confidence replaced by confusion and fear. He lunged, his sword striking the Gundam's armor with a pathetic clang. Amuro didn't flinch. His beam saber ignited with its iconic whoosh, a blade of pure plasma. He didn't swing to kill. With a precise flick, he severed the man's sword clean in half. Before the man could react, Amuro's armored fist connected with his jaw, followed by a swift, judicious use of the Gundam's wire anchor, wrapping around the man's legs and sending him crashing to the ground, unconscious. Silence descended upon the square. Then, whispers began. That armor. No, it can't be. I thought he died. Is it him? Has the White Knight returned? Amuro heard the title again. Before he could process it, he noticed two hooded figures at the edge of the crowd. They weren't human, elf, or any race he recognized. They simply watched, then melted back into the shadows. After the duel, Arya attached herself to his side, her relief palpable. Back in their room, as she hugged him from behind, her head resting against his armored back, a firm knock echoed at the door. Amuro opened it, and his jaw dropped. Standing in the hallway were two figures straight out of a child's toy box. One was a chibi-fied, SD-style Knight Gundam, complete with a tiny cape and a crest on its shield. The other was a similarly proportioned priest's gun tank, its cannon arms replaced with ceremonial sensors. Arya beamed. Sir Knight Gundam, it's good to see you. The diminutive knight bowed its head, its voice a synthesized, yet respectful, baritone. And you, Lady Arya. It appears the prophecy holds true. It then turned its mono-eye to Amuro and bowed deeply, the gun tank following suit. The White Unicorn Kingdom has awaited your return for a long time, my lord. Amuro could only stare, utterly speechless. They were bowing to him. The journey to their kingdom was made in a silent, solemn carriage. When they arrived, Amuro's disbelief only grew. The White Unicorn Kingdom was a breathtaking fusion of medieval architecture and subtle technology. Cobblestone streets were patrolled by SDGM guardsmen with spear and shield. Archer GM snipers stood watch on towers. In plazas, young SDGM cadets drilled under the watchful eye of a Zaku sergeant. Civilians, a mix of humans, elves, and other fantasy races, bowed respectfully as their carriage passed. Amuro's breath caught as they rolled into the central square. There, towering over everything, was a magnificent statue. It depicted a knight in familiar, though stylized, Gundam armor, its foot planted triumphantly on the necks of a Hydra, whose heads were unmistakably, terrifyingly, those of Zaku's. He looked from the statue to his own armored hands, then out at the city of living, breathing, chibi mobile suits. The sheer absurdity of it was overwhelming. This wasn't just a new world. It was a new destiny, and it seemed it had been waiting for him long before he arrived. His adventure, he realized, had only just begun. Chapter 3. Getting Stronger. Life in the White Unicorn Kingdom settled into a new rhythm for Amuro Ray. He was formally introduced to a wider circle of adventurers, a boisterous group whose skills were as varied as their personalities. Though he missed the familiar faces of his own crew, he found himself leading a new party. The steadfast Arya, the noble Knight Gundam, the supportive priestess gun tank, and a stalwart warrior gun cannon. Their training was a spectacle of anachronisms. While Amuro's instincts yearned for the advanced tech of his world, he watched with grudging respect as his companions demonstrated their unique abilities. Knight Gundam was particularly impressive, summoning a wind tornado cyclone, with his blade that could scatter a training dummy into splinters. I have to admit, Amuro thought, even if it's all a bit fantastical, that Knight Gundam is the real deal. Their first major dungeon delve together was a chaotic success. The party moved with practiced efficiency, though Amuro couldn't help but wince every time one of the more aggressive female adventurers in a neighboring party targeted a monster's groin with brutal precision. A particularly close call with a cave trolls club left him with a cracked rib, but Priestess Guntank was there in an instant, a soft, healing light emanating from her sensor arms that knitted the bone back together seamlessly. From the shadows, an SDGM sniper custom, a quiet elf girl with impossibly sharp eyes, provided overwatch. Her crossbow-like weapon cracked with unerring accuracy, each shot a perfect headshot that dropped monsters before they even knew she was there. By the time they cleared the dungeon's final chamber, Amuro's HUD flashed with a significant notification. Level up. Current level, 205. The growth was exponential, a testament to the fierce challenges of this world. The evening's reward was a trip to the hot springs. Through a series of miscommunications and playful shoves from his party, Amuro found himself stumbling not into the men's baths but into the women's. A chorus of shrieks and laughter greeted him. Before he could retreat, Arya, seeing his profound embarrassment, pulled him into the water with a mischievous grin. "Relax, everyone. He's with me," she declared. The tension broke, replaced by good-natured teasing. Amuro tried to focus on the steam and the stars, but it was a losing battle as Arya pressed close, her voluptuous form against his chest short-circuiting his higher brain functions. For the famed White Devil, this was a battlefield far more terrifying than any Xeon onslaught. The respite was short-lived. Their next mission took them deep into a dungeon corrupted by a sinister energy. The air hummed with malice. And then, they appeared. SD Xeon mobile suits. Their leader stepped forward, a crimson-red Zaku with a commander's horn and a cruel, painted grin. It leveled a massive minigun directly at Amuro. "So, it certainly seems the rumors are true," the Zaku's synthesized voice grated. "The White Devil himself finally returns." The minigun roared to life, spewing a hail of lead. Amuro reacted instantly, the RX-78 shield materializing on his arm, deflecting the barrage in a storm of sparks and ricochets. From the shadows, more SD Xeon suits emerged, Dom warriors and Zaku eyes, their mono eyes glowing with malevolent intent. They swarmed the party. "Dark Axis," Knight Gundam shouted, parrying a heat hawk. "This dungeon is under their control." Amuro fought with controlled fury. He dismissed the shield and in its place, the spiked ball of the Gundam hammer erupted from its housing. He swung it in a wide, devastating arc, smashing through Zaku's and catching the Crimson Zaku commander square in the face with a satisfying crunch of plastic and metal. Staggered and damaged, the Crimson Zaku began a retreat, its remaining forces falling back with him. "This isn't over," the Zaku commander snarled, its voice crackling with static. "This isn't the last time we meet. The Red Comet, Lord Char Aznable, will be waiting for you." The name hit Amuro like a physical blow, freezing him in place. All his doubts, all his faint hopes that it was a coincidence, evaporated. The cold, hard truth settled in his gut. Char was alive. And he wasn't just here, he was leading this, Dark Axis. The dungeon was secured, the mission a success. But back at the kingdom, standing alone on a balcony under a foreign sky, Amuro felt no sense of victory. He stared into the night, the Zaku's final words echoing in his mind. The pieces were now in place on this bizarre new board. "Char," he whispered to the stars, his voice tight with a familiar, weary resolve. "What kind of evil scheme are you planning this time?" Chapter 4, First Boss at the City. Amuro Ray, now revered as the White Unicorn within the kingdom, continued to settle into his role. The adulation from the citizens and the constant, affectionate attention from his elf companion, Arya, had become his new normal. His true focus, however, was on preparation. He dedicated himself to training the kingdom's forces, drilling gun cannon warriors in advanced tactical strategies and overseeing the creation of an elite special forces unit. This new group, dubbed the Hero Team Loto, consisted of SDGM types outfitted with improved, custom-built armor and weaponry. He even took personal interest in training an SD Swordsman GM custom, honing its precision and blade work to a razor's edge. Under his command, they began systematically clearing dungeons corrupted by the Dark Axis. They faced formidable SD opponents like the swift and agile knight Gilgamesh and a particularly tenacious warrior Rikdom II. Amuro would direct his Round Table Knight GMs, with calm authority, turning each encounter into a tactical lesson. With each victory, his strength grew, his level steadily climbing. He faced a warrior Hazak, a grotesque SD parody of a Titan's mobile suit. "Time for you to die, White Unicorn," it roared, charging with a fiery axe. Amuro met it with his beam saber, parried the blow, and delivered a devastating kick to its torso before finishing it with a single, precise thrust. The explosion was satisfying. But the true challenge awaited in the deepest chamber of the most corrupted dungeon. There, standing as the area's final guardian, was a sight that sent a jolt of nostalgia and dread through Amuro. It was a mobile armor from the One-Year War, recreated in this world as a towering SD boss, the Destroyer, Big Zam. Amuro's HUD flashed with its status. Destroyer, Big Zam, 450 Latvian laches. Damn, this guy's even stronger than me, Amuro muttered, already moving. The Big Zam's main cannons erupted, tearing gouges in the earth around him. He transformed into his RX-78 armor, the familiar form of comfort against the insane power. You can't run from me, little warrior. The Zam boomed. Don't get full of yourself just because I'm an easy target. Amuro shot back, weaving through the barrage. He targeted the weak points he remembered from a lifetime ago, the leg joints, the vulnerable seams in its armor. It was a deadly dance of memory and instinct. Finally, he saw his opening. Just as he had in the One-Year War, he aimed for the head, pouring all his energy into a single, decisive beam saber strike. The Big Zam erupted in a cataclysmic explosion. As the smoke cleared, Amuro reverted to his normal form, breathing heavily. This world, it's always a mimicry of my past, he mused, the memories of war washing over him. His HUD updated. Level up. Current level, 350. New skills and a significant boost to his stats flooded his system. He thought it was over, but his new type senses screamed a warning. From a hidden passage, a swarm of SD mobile suits poured forth, warrior Gelgug bees, led by a hulking heavy warrior. Charge. Take down the white unicorn. The heavy warrior bellowed. Outnumbered, Amuro prepared for another fight. But before he could engage, the hero team Loto, all 6 of them, leapt into the fray. Not on our watch. Their leader, Loto 1, shouted. Though small in number, their training under Amuro proved superior. They moved as one, a whirlwind of precise strikes and coordinated fire, cutting through the swarm of Gelgugs with stunning efficiency. They were leveling up before his eyes. Dark Axis will conquer this land. The heavy warrior roared, struggling against the elite team. Lord Char Aznable, the Red Comet, will make sure your death is swift and painless. The mention of Char's name was the final straw. In a flash of motion too fast to follow, Amuro drew his beam saber and cleaved the heavy warrior clean in half. Silence fell. The remaining Dark Axis forces retreated into the shadows. The hero team Loto cheered, their levels skyrocketing from the intense battle. Take that, you Dark Axis scum. Loto 3 yelled, pumping a fist. Yeah, don't ever mess with Sir Amuro, the white champion of this world. Added Loto 2. Amuro allowed himself a small smile at their enthusiasm, but his mind was elsewhere. The heavy warrior's confirmation was absolute. Char was here, he was leading this enemy, and a final confrontation was inevitable. Amuro would be ready. However, in a distant pocket universe known as the Dark of Void, a threat far greater than the Dark Axis was stirring. Upon a throne of obsidian and shattered worlds sat a Gundam of immense dark power, Musha Gundam. Its samurai-like armor was pitch black, and its eyes glowed with malevolent intent. Before it stood an armada of bizarre and advanced SD mobile suits, the Dimensional Pirates. Grotesque designs like the Lagauri, Duel Master, and Gosnell Zahale bobbed in the void alongside a monstrous flagship, the Dimensional Halo, a vessel with a single, massive eye at its prow that pulsed with dimensional energy. Musha Gundam rose from its throne, its voice echoing through the void. The time for lurking in the shadows is over. It is time for this world to know the true force that will consume it. A thunderous roar of cheers and raised weapons erupted from the legion of pirate mobile suits. They were coming. And neither the White Unicorn nor the Red Comet had any idea. Chapter 5, The Golden Knight. Weeks turned into months, and Amuro Ray, the White Unicorn, grew exponentially stronger. His relentless campaign against the Dark Axis forces pushed his abilities and his level to new heights. He faced a gauntlet of powerful SD enemies, some reminiscent of Neo Zeon designs from his past. While many were hostile, others, like the formidable fighter Max Gundam, were initially adversaries who, after being bested, became respected allies. The challenges grew more severe. In a deep, poisoned cavern, he faced a boss known as Warrior Cobra Gundam. The air was thick with toxic mist as the serpentine mobile suit lunged with blinding speed, its attacks laced with a paralyzing venom. "Is that all you've got, White Unicorn?" The Cobra Gundam mocked, its tail striking like a whip. Amuro moved with practiced precision, his RX-78 shield deflecting the blows. He used his thrusters to evade, biding his time. "I'm just getting warmed up," he retorted. Seizing an opening, he hurled a flash grenade, momentarily disorienting the creature. In that split second, he materialized the Gundam's bazooka and fired a single, devastating round that obliterated the Cobra Gundam in a fiery explosion. Level up. Current level, 540. Before he could catch his breath, his new type senses screamed a warning. From the shadows of the cavern ceiling, a swarm of insectoid SD mobile suits descended, monster-grip mantises. They moved with terrifying speed, their razor-sharp claws scratching deep gouges in his armor. Amuro fought defensively, overwhelmed by their numbers. As one mantis poised for a final, lethal strike, he braced for the impact. A golden blur shot past him. A beam saber, burning with a familiar crimson energy, sliced the mantis clean in half. Amuro turned, his eyes widening in disbelief. Standing there, resplendent in gold and black, was the unmistakable form of the Hyaku Shiki. "Well now," a smooth, cultured voice emanated from the mobile suit. "It seems you could use a hand." Amuro's mind raced. The Hyaku Shiki. It was his machine. But the pilot wasn't the enemy he expected. This was the guise of Lieutenant Quattro Bagina. "Quattro," Amuro said, his voice guarded. "The one and only," the pilot replied. "Shall we clean up this infestation?" With a neutral nod, Amuro fought alongside the Golden Knight. Their synergy was effortless, a deadly dance forged in the fires of the Grip's conflict. Together, they made short work of the remaining mantises. Later, in the main tavern of the White Unicorn Kingdom, the atmosphere was tense. Amuro stood stiffly as Arya hugged his arm, her cheerful demeanor contrasting sharply with his own wariness. His eyes never left Quattro, who sipped a drink calmly at a corner table. Arya noticed his fixation. "Hey, are you all right?" she whispered. "Yeah," Amuro lied, forcing a smile. "It's nothing, really." The citizens whispered, calling the newcomer the Golden Knight, a neutral warrior who fought for freedom. Over the following weeks, the two new types maintained an uneasy alliance. They fought side by side against new threats, like the monstrous Mazer ants, a fusion of SD vehicle and insect. Their combined power was immense, and Amuro's level soared even higher. But the collaboration was a fragile facade. Amuro remembered everything. The one-year war, the betrayal during Grips, the final, tragic battle at Axis. He knew the man inside the Hyaku Shiki was not Quattro Bagina, the hero of AEUG. He was Char Aznable, the Red Comet. The charade ended one evening. After a mission, the Golden Knight did not return to the tavern. Instead, from a hill overlooking the kingdom, Char Aznable, out of his mobile suit and clad in his signature red, stared at the distant castle of the White Unicorn. He had been given a second chance in a world of peace, but his path was clear. This world was about to become a new battlefield. Away in the castle, Amuro felt the shift, a cold certainty settling in his soul. The Golden Knight was gone. The Red Comet had returned to his throne. Their brief truce was over. The war for this world was about to begin in earnest. Chapter 6, Amuro vs. Char. For months, the Shadow War had festered. But the sight that greeted Amuro from the castle battlements was a declaration of open conflict. The plains below the White Unicorn Kingdom were darkened not by clouds, but by the advancing legions of the Dark Axis. Squadrons of Zakui eyes marched in grim lockstep, flanked by the heavier, thudding footsteps of Dom troopers. Among them, Amuro's enhanced sensors picked out the more formidable signatures of warrior Rick Doms and the hulking forms of a new, brutish SD Zaku type he didn't recognize. "So, you finally decided to stop hiding, Char," Amuro murmured, his voice cold. The time for games was over. The fortress of the White Unicorn became a hive of controlled chaos. Amuro's voice, calm yet authoritative, cut through the din, coordinating strategies via comms. "Gun cannon teams, hold the western ridge. Suppressing fire on my mark. Knight GMs, you are the anvil. Hold the line at the canyon pass." The battle erupted in a cataclysm of sound and light. On the front lines, Dom warriors clad in spiked, dark armor clashed with the stalwart gun cannon warriors, their heavy shells cratering the earth. Behind them, the gun tank mages, 1 and 2, chanted in unison, their hulls glowing as healing waves washed over the allied lines and enchantment spells shimmered on the armor of the frontline troops. From elevated positions, the archer GM snipers, Lyra among them, let loose volleys of beam-tipped arrows that fell like deadly rain, piercing mono eyes and joint armor with pinpoint accuracy. But it wasn't enough. The Dark Axis numbers were overwhelming. Seeing a critical flank about to collapse, Amuro knew he could no longer direct from the rear. "It's time," he said to Arya, who nodded, her daggers already in hand. On the battlefield, Char Aznable, ensconced within the cockpit of his sinuous, powerful nightingale, watched the carnage with a satisfied smirk. The White Unicorn's forces were valiant, but they fought with a rigidity his own chaotic strategies exploited. His victory was inevitable. That smirk vanished as a brilliant white light erupted at the heart of the Allied lines. Amuro Ray had entered the fray, his form shifting and expanding into the legendary High Nu Gundam, its fin funnels detaching and hovering like a halo of vengeance. The two rivals stood across the smoldering battlefield, a silent understanding passing between them, a conversation held not with words but with the pressure of their new-type auras. History was repeating, a cycle they seemed destined to replay across the stars. "Char." Amuro's voice boomed over the open channel. "Amuro," came the reply, laced with its familiar, mocking warmth. The High Nu Gundam shot forward, beam saber igniting in a blaze of pink. The Nightingale met the charge, its own massive beam tomahawk swinging forth. Their melee weapons clashed with a shriek of tortured energy, sending a shockwave that flattened mobile suits for meters around. The duel was a spectacle beyond the comprehension of the soldiers around them. They were a blur of motion, the High Nu's agility against the Nightingale's raw power. Their fin funnels and incoms deployed, creating a secondary battlefield in the air, a deadly dance of beams and psionic energy as the remote weapons jeweled, intercepting shots and seeking fleeting openings. The psycho frame of both machines began to glow, emanating a palpable aura that pressed on the minds of every pilot on the field. The very air crackled with their intent. "Will we never be free of this, Char?" Amuro grunted, parrying a blow that would have cleaved his mobile suit in two. "This is our freedom, Amuro. The freedom to clash, to prove whose will is stronger," Char retorted, pushing forward with immense force. They gave simultaneous war cries, their beam weapons locking again in a blinding cascade of light. The ground beneath their feet began to fracture. It was a stalemate of titans, a perfect, destructive equilibrium that promised mutual annihilation. But before either could break the deadlock, the sky tore open. A massive, unnatural rift split the heavens, casting a sickly, violet light over the battlefield. The very sound of the war was swallowed by a deep, dimensional hum. Every mobile suit, from the lowliest Zaku to the two legendary Gundams, halted and looked up. Descending from the rift was an armada of nightmares. The colossal, single-eyed fortress, the dimensional halo, led a fleet of bizarre, unrecognizable SD mobile suits. Grotesque, insectoid designs like the Dagula, the Gikang, and the Jababa swarmed forth like locusts, their forms a mockery of known mobile suit engineering. Inside their cockpits, Amuro and Char stared, their rivalry momentarily forgotten in the face of this existential threat. Their new-type senses screamed in unison, this was a wave of pure, consuming malice. Their comms crackled to life, a direct, private channel opening between them. Amuro, Char's voice was stripped of its mockery, now all cold, tactical calculation. "Char," Amuro replied, his own voice heavy with grim resignation. No further words were needed. The message was clear. The war between the Comet and the Unicorn was put on hold. Across the battlefield, a bizarre and unprecedented sight unfolded. Warrior Doms turned their machine guns away from Knight GMs to fire into the swarming Digdala. Gun cannons provided artillery support for retreating Zaku IIs. The war was no longer Zeon versus Federation, Dark Axis versus White Unicorn. It had become a battle for survival. And the two greatest rivals in history found themselves, once again, on the same side. Chapter 8: A new era forged in light. The battlefield was a maelstrom of chaos, but a new order was emerging from it. The sudden, existential threat of the dimensional pirates had forged an unthinkable alliance. The Crimson of the Dark Axis now fought side by side with the white and blue of the White Unicorn Kingdom. Zakui eyes provided covering fire for advancing GMs, while warrior doms formed shield walls alongside gun cannon warriors. From his command position, Amuro Ray, in the form of the High New Gundam, coordinated the combined forces with ruthless efficiency. All units, focus fire on their flanking maneuvers. Don't let the Jababa units encircle the snipers. Across the field, Char Aznable in his Nightingale was a whirlwind of destruction, his funnels creating a web of crimson death that cleared entire squadrons of Dagula and Gikeng units. Amuro, their command structure is centralized. We must break through to their leader. Their level of power was skyrocketing, fueled by the sheer number and strength of their new foes. Amuro unleashed the High News Mega Particle Cannon, a sweeping beam of incandescent energy that vaporized a full third of the advancing pirate vanguard. It seems our rivalry has made us the perfect sharpened blade, Char remarked over a private channel, a note of grim amusement in his voice. High above the carnage, atop the floating fortress dimensional halo, the Musha Gundam observed the battle. Its glowing red eyes narrowed. So, the wolf and the lion lay down together to face the hunter. A troublesome development, but not an unforeseen one. As the battle reached its peak, a dark energy coalesced before the Allied command units. With an earth-shattering impact that carved a deep crater into the ground, the Musha Gundam landed, its malevolent aura pressing down on every soul present. Amuro and Char turned their mobile suits to face this new threat, their sensors screaming with danger. So, you're the one pulling the strings, Amuro's voice was hard as steel. Musha Gundam's voice echoed, cold and devoid of emotion. I will scour this world clean. From the ashes, a new, pure order will rise. This is true prosperity. True prosperity. Amuro shot back, the High New Gundam raising its beam saber. Destroying lives and forcing your will upon others is tyranny, not prosperity. We must believe in the potential for good within every heart. To Amuro's surprise, a grunt of agreement came from Char's Nightingale. He is right. I have seen the cost of such ambition. For a fleeting moment, the ghost of the Axis shock passed through Char's mind, the collective will of humanity pushing back against fate. It was a lesson he had learned too late, but one he would not forget here. With a shared, unspoken understanding, the two rivals charged as one. The clash was titanic. The Musha Gundam was a demon of dark samurai design, its blade moving with impossible speed, deflecting their combined assaults. Beam sabers and a beam tomahawk clashed against the dark katana in a storm of sparks and psychic energy. It was a deadly dance, but the synergy between the Red Comet and the White Devil was unparalleled. They moved as if they shared a single mind, anticipating each other's attacks and covering every opening. Now, Char! Amuro yelled. In a move that mirrored a fateful battle from a war long past, the Nightingale lunged, not for a killing blow, but to create an opening. It seized the Musha Gundam's blade arm. In that split second, the High New Gundam thrust its beam saber forward, not into the cockpit, but in a precise, disabling strike to the chest reactor, just as Char had once done to Amuro in the One-Year War. The Musha Gundam staggered. Seizing the moment, the two rivals struck simultaneously, their beam weapons flashing in a cross-shaped arc that severed the Dark Samurai's arms at the shoulders. Impossible. The Musha Gundam roared. This is the power of a bond forged in battle, Amuro stated calmly. This is the end of your war, Char added. Together, they unleashed a final, combined beam attack, a spiral of pink and crimson energy that consumed the Musha Gundam entirely, obliterating it in a silent, expanding sphere of light. On the ground, the combined super weapons of both armies, a cannon of immense power, found its mark. A single, concentrated blast lanced into the dimensional halo's core. The massive fortress shuddered, then erupted into a chain reaction of explosions, lighting up the sky like a second sun. Across the battlefield, the remaining pirate mobile suits powered down, their connection to their command source severed. A deafening cheer rose from the united forces of the Dark Axis and the White Unicorn. Zaku and GM pilots embraced, their long-standing hatred washed away in the shared euphoria of survival and victory. Epilogue. From the ashes of the war, a new nation was born, the United Highlands. It was a colony, a haven for all races, humans, elves, beastmen, and the sentient mobile suits who had fought on both sides. The old banners of the Dark Axis and the White Unicorn were retired, replaced by a new emblem representing unity. In this new era of peace, Amuro Ray found the happiness he had always fought for. He married Arya, the spirited elf who had stood by his side. Their child, a symbol of this new world, had Amuro's unruly brown hair and the delicate, pointed ears of their mother. Char Aznable, his thirst for conflict finally quelled, found a new purpose. No longer the red comet of destruction, he became a guardian of this hard-won peace, his sharp mind now dedicated to ensuring it would last. The United Highlands stood as a testament to their struggle. Its military was a unified force of Zakus, GMs, Jigans, and Doms, not to conquer, but to protect the freedom of its people. It was a world where individuals were free to choose their own path, their own future. History, for so long a cycle of war and hatred, had finally been changed for the better. The war was over. A new era of peace and harmony had begun. And this is the movie of this what if.